Welcome to Podcast 83, a regular look at the news, stories, and trends related to Michigan's 83 counties from the Michigan Association of Counties.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Podcast 83, the podcast put on by the Michigan Association of Counties. Today we are joined with Deena Bosworth and Madeline Fata from the MAC staff, of course. Unfortunately, Samantha couldn't join us today. But this week, as we move into essentially a lame duck session, we wanted to talk a little bit about what happened late last week with leadership, talk a little bit about what we're seeing with new county commissioners school, and just some things like that. So first up, Deena, Madeline, let's talk a little bit about leadership elections that occurred last week. Tell us what happened in the House minority and majority.
Yeah, so just sort of a little bit of recap from the election. We saw the election results switch power for the Michigan House of Representatives from Democratic control to Republican control. So the Dems had a 56-54 majority this legislative session. And like we were talking about earlier, Steve, although the election results have not been certified yet, it looks like that's flipped to a 58-52 Republican majority. So what that means is the Dems now will have to have a minority leader for next legislative session, and then the speakership switches to the Republicans. So on Thursday, they came back to town, and the newly electeds came with them, and they voted on leadership posts. The day before the leadership, so on Wednesday, Speaker Joe Tate declined running for minority leader for the Democrats for next legislative term. He stepped down and let that election happen, let other people run for that post. There were several people who were interested, but in the end, the Democrats coalesced around Puri as the minority leader. So Ranjeev Puri will be the minority leader for the Dems next legislative session. They also voted for John Fitzgerald to be the minority floor leader. So John Fitzgerald's out of Kent County. On the Republican side, there were some challenges, but Minority Leader Matt Hall, who is currently, like I said, the minority leader, was elected as Speaker. So he will lead the Republicans in the next legislative session. And they also voted for Representative Posthumus for floor leader. That's kind of what happened last week. The Senate also is not really going to have any leadership changes, but they will have some changes in their numbers because Kristen McDonald-Rivet won her congressional bid, which is going to leave that seat vacant, that Bay County area, several counties, but leave that seat vacant until they run a special election. So now the Democrats will have a 19-18 majority until that seat is filled. Now, it narrows the margin of their majority, but we also have the lieutenant governor who can vote and break any ties. So they'd still have that one vote to count on.
Yeah, and that the lieutenant governor vote only comes in if there is a tie. He doesn't vote regularly. It's only if there is a tie. With that being said, back to the House now we're going to see shuffling of all committees, right? With the change in majority, all committees will be changed. As far as leadership of those committees, who's on those committees, everything's going to get shuffled around now, and we'll have to wait and see how those play out, correct?
Yeah, new committee chairs, new committee vice chairs, that's going to be up to the Republicans to decide. They will make the assignments for who is on what. So new appropriations chair, new local government chair, new judiciary and public safety chair. So it will be significant changes. We also know, so this is next year, what that means is the Republicans in the House and the Democrats in the Senate are going to have to agree on some things if they plan on getting anything done. But at this point, you're still going to have a Dem Senate, you're still going to have a Dem governor, and then you're going to have, Republican House, and they're going to have to figure out how to work together.
Yeah, and then when will they typically do those committees? Will that happen? They'll put a committee on committees together.
Yeah, it usually takes a little while to figure that out. Now, given that Matt Hall's been in leadership before, they probably have a jump start on that. Usually in leadership elections, they try and vie for votes and, we'll make promises to different members in order for them to vote for him for speaker, so he's probably got some idea, on who's going to chair those committees. It's just rearranging everyone's schedule, when those committees are going to meet, making sure people aren't doubled up. And he's got, the right people in the right positions to move legislation forward. That takes a little while. So I'm going to say late January. That it has to be done before February, because that's when the governor comes out and does her, budget presentation. So all committees are going to have to be set. A probes committee is going to have to be set prior to that.
Yeah, and then of course, the goal is always to get the budget done by July 1st, which that'll be interesting to see how that plays out this year or next year.
You're such a pessimist this morning, Steve. I can hear it in your voice.
I just said interesting. That's all I said.
Yeah.
That being said, let's talk about the calendar for the rest of the year now. What are we expecting as far as, we've got hunting break coming up, we've got Thanksgiving, we've got, talk a little bit about that.
Madeline, you want to take that one?
Sure, I can try because it is still a touch unpredictable. Today, as we're recording, it is November 12th, and the Senate has not scheduled session for the day. We were kind of under the impression that both chambers would have session all 3 days this week. And then next week, they are off for hunting break. The following week, they are off for Thanksgiving. The following week is that first week in December, and we expect both chambers to be in all 3 days that week. The following week, which brings us to Thursday, December 12th. So it's possible that session will just be those 3 weeks, but if they don't get things done, they could come in that third week of December, bringing us to Thursday, the 19th. Does that make sense? Or did I just make that more complicated than it needed to be?
Well, we're looking at a minimum of 3 weeks of lame duck, right?
We were
That's what we
thinking
anticipate.
9 or 12 days. The Senate has already knocked that down to 8 or 11 days for themselves, but yes.
But they are having committees meet today.
Yes,
So,
of course.
you know what surprised me? What surprised me was last week when they came in for leadership elections, that they actually ran bills in both chambers. So, we were skeptical as to whether or not they were going to have a robust lame duck session. But I think they are. I think they have, big ideas, big agenda items that they want to get done. And I see them actually rolling up their sleeves and getting some work done.
I
At least
think
I
if
hope.
the committee schedule for this week is any indication, they're going to be busy. Both chambers have a lot of committees with long agendas booked this week.
Well, and you see some pretty big bill packages up in the House today that we weren't necessarily expecting to see so early in the lame duck session, right? Got a pretty big economic development. A few of those economic development bills that are up in the House side that we know are a priority of the governor that need to switch chambers, and to see those up as early as we have in right now. I would have expected those later and kind of used maybe as a negotiation tool between the chambers, or if there's their House bills are sitting in the House, maybe the House holds on to them until they see maybe some of their bills in the Senate get, usually you see that stuff kind of kept in people's back pocket to the last possible moment.
Well, I think getting the bills over to the second chamber is the key.
Mm-hmm.
We saw when the House was, before the election, the Senate came in a few times and moved just huge number of Senate bills and dropped them in the House's lap. So I think you're right, Steve. I think they're setting themselves up for negotiation, but they need those bills in the second chamber in order to be able to do it. So yeah, that big, a lot of the economic development bills are headed over there. I don't think it's soup yet. I don't think they know what that package is going to look like at the end of the day. I think we all know it's extremely important to the governor to get her economic development package done, but what it looks like at the end of the day, I think they have a long way to go to negotiate that out.
Well, and a lot's going to depend on attendance, who's here, who's not here. Slim majority still in the House and in the Senate. Those, Senator Rivet is still a senator till the end of the year, so she still can vote. You've got, House members still a majority in the House, so they can still take control of things if they have the right people here to do it. So it'll be interesting to see how that attendance plays out over the next couple weeks too. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. County commissioners. So obviously county commissioners were up for their first time for 4-year terms. Of course, like Deena mentioned, nothing's been certified yet, but what are we looking at as far as changeover? Deena, Madeline, did you catch that number from Derek earlier?
I know you called the number from Derek.
I know, I was
I
just,
want to say it's 133 or 135 new commissioners. Come
Said
on.
135 new.
135 new commissioners right
Yeah.
now, as we expected. Obviously, again, certification's not done, which puts us right in that 20% range of new commissioners, which is, with the exception of the last election, is pretty standard turnover for county commissioners. So we didn't see a huge jump because of it being 4-year terms. We didn't, we basically saw status quo. And with that being said, of course, want to take an opportunity to discuss our new county commissioner schools, which are coming up the first 2 weeks in December. So they're Monday, Tuesday of the first 2 weeks of December. I don't have those dates in front of me. I don't know if either of you can pull those up real quick. But they are rotating across the state. We have 4 locations for those. We'll have them
The
in.
2nd and the 3rd in December.
Okay, 2nd and 3rd, and then that following week is
9, 10.
Yeah. Yep. December 2nd is in Frankenmuth. December 3rd is in Shelbyville. December 9th is in Grayling. Yep. And then I think we're going up to Escanaba on the 10th.
Yes, so those actually kick off with a webinar this Thursday, November 14th at 11 a.m. You'll see a QR code pop up. You can register for the new county commissioner school through that QR code. I would encourage those folks who have new commissioners coming on board to get them registered. I think as of a week and a half ago, we had about 80 folks registered. And that's of course a mix of new and old. So it's always encouraged that more seasoned commissioners register as well, because that kind of input with those newer members is valuable. There's a lot of time to share notes, share phone numbers, so those folks that are coming on board have someone to look to if they need to outside of their county. Oftentimes is very helpful. So again, November 14th is kind of the kickoff webinar. And then we have the in-person sessions coming up the 2nd, 3rd, and 7th and 9th. So you can see those through the QR code. With that, I don't know, is there anything else I didn't touch on that we wanted to touch on before we get into this, crazy time of year?
I don't think so. I think they, just send us off. We've got work to do.
Yeah, so everyone stay close to their emails. Of course, as this time of year goes, we'll be sending out alerts. Might need some help with some legislators to help, push some of the issues that we've been working on. Of course, we've talked about them numerous times. Number one being the revenue sharing trust fund. Hopefully be able to get some movement on that and some of those other issues we've talked about. So we'll keep you up to date each week on the podcast on that. And of course, our weekly update will come via email on Friday. So stay close to that too. So with that, if there's nothing else, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Podcast 83.